My name is Wendy Ikemoto, and I am Associate Curator of American Art at the New York Historical Society. Betty Saar is a 92-year-old mixed-race artist of African, Irish, and Native American descent. Saar was born in 1926, directly into the Jim Crow era. The Jim Crow era was a period of legalized racism, effected through state laws that demanded separate facilities for Black people and for white people, separate restrooms, separate train cars, etc. Much of visual culture during the Jim Crow era depicted African Americans as grossly stereotyped figures. One of the most famous Black stereotypes was actually Jim Crow. Racial segregation became known as Jim Crow laws, and that's why we know of that era as the Jim Crow era. Some of the primary stereotypes were the mammy, who was a large Black woman wearing a kerchief and an apron. Usually these stereotypes took the form of everyday objects, salt and pepper shakers or creamers or sugar bowls. The reason they proliferated in everyday objects is because it's in the everyday and the ordinary that racism can flourish. Saar says, and I'm quoting her, "I like using an ordinary object and changing the meaning of it." Betty Saar's The Liberation of Aunt Jemima from 1972 is a shoebox-sized assemblage consisting of a shallow wooden box into which Saar has inserted a number of objects. The main figure is Aunt Jemima, a mammy figure. First, you can see her on the back wall, Aunt Jemima logos that are repeated over and over again in a grid pattern. The second time Aunt Jemima appears is a postcard, and it features this Aunt Jemima mammy figure holding an infant of mixed race. And the third time that Aunt Jemima appears is a mammy notepad. Originally, this figurine would have held, where the postcard is, a notepad, and in her hand she would have held a pencil or a pen. The Aunt Jemima figure still holds a broom, but she now also holds a rifle and a gun. And in front of her is a Black Power fist, a common symbol of the Black Power movement, which advocated racial pride and economic independence. Saar is reimagining a figure originally meant to denigrate someone else, keep her in her place of servitude. She has now been armed and is ready to fight injustice. Saar essentially is using the weapon symbolically to suggest a fighting spirit. I will quote her, "It wasn't that I was advocating violence through weapons, but I thought if you saw a weapon, you would know that she meant business. I used the image of the gun to imply that kind of violence, but her true violence was her spirit, that she wanted to overcome, that she wanted to move on from where her position was." Betty Saar's Extreme Times Call for Extreme Heroines is a recent assemblage from 2017, but it continues the work of the liberation of Aunt Jemima. Saar says that she likes the nostalgic feeling that the washboard evokes in many people. These were tools that were used primarily dating from the very late 1700s into the early 1900s to wash clothes. Washing work was often the only type of work available to Black women after the abolition of slavery. It was extraordinarily back-breaking work. Saar is looking at the washboard as a symbol of hard labor, a symbol of suffering, but also a symbol of perseverance, because she sees these Black washerwomen as trying to cleanse the nation of the stains of racism. On this particular washboard, she has placed a wooden figure, another mammy. So it looks almost like she's stepping out of the frame, almost like she's breaking free of this symbol of labor. She has been transformed like Aunt Jemima in the 1972 piece, insofar as she is now holding a rifle. So she, like Aunt Jemima, is ready to combat racism. She's ready to fight off oppression. And she appears underneath the words "Extreme Times Call for Extreme Heroines." On top of the washboard is placed a stopped clock. Saar says that the stopped clock is meant to represent the contrast between the progress of time and the lack of social progress. So what are the extreme times? There are times. Saar says that she has resurrected Aunt Jemima in order to call attention to the fact that not much has changed. Racism still persists. An assemblage is all about taking found materials from the past and reusing them. Saar is telling us that these past objects have a continued life, that the past is alive, and we still have work to do. But she does leave us a sense of hope. This idea that history is cyclical, like washing is cyclical, but with every cycle of history, maybe our world is getting a little bit cleaner.